So last we talked about feelings, letting them arise on their own, and I guess for a time they persist and then they go, not leaning towards the pressure of wanting to more of it, or wanting less of whatever feeling has arisen. And I've been reflecting on that for some time, and I'm trying to stop my old tendency of like feeling, or how am I feeling, and sort of like those old mindfulness tendencies of sort of reflexively labeling and repeating to myself what's going on. I guess what came to my mind was there's a determination that arises from feeling, like to want more of it if it is pleasing, or to not want it if it's not pleasing. And the determination, if it's a neutral feeling, is, I guess, most of the time is sort of like, it persists for a time. It's like, oh, all right, this is a neutral mood or attitude. But then there's sort of like anxiety that builds up, and a restlessness, and then wanting to seek some kind of experience or stimulus. I was thinking to myself, in line with reading a sutta involving the Buddha talking about thinking and pondering, or jhanas, or even Brahma Viharas, these abodes of thinking and thought. In that way, it's sort of seeking a pleasant abiding, as it's said in the suttas. And the Buddha says that it's a blameless thing to seek out and have it, but at the same time that is a desire to want.
Well, no, that's the thing. Those pleasant abidings is not something you can want, which means in order to get the pleasant abiding of jhana, first you need to stop running away from unpleasant abidings that are not jhana. In other words, you can't use jhana to replace the unpleasant abidings that bother you, restlessness, anxiety, and so on. That's why whenever the Buddha describes the jhana, he would say that worry and concern about the world have been abandoned beforehand. He has been living withdrawal from sensuality beforehand. He experienced pleasure on account of it, and then his mind enters jhana. So you can't want jhana. I mean, you can want it in a theoretical sense, like, oh, this is something worth developing it. But developing jhana cannot be rooted in your desire, which is why it's blameless. So when the Buddha talks about the pleasure of jhana, it's the pleasure of you not needing to run away from pain anymore. That becomes pleasant because it's a relief, because you're not bothered by the pain, and that's how you enter jhana. You don't enter jhana by replacing the feeling of discomfort or anxiety or whatever else with this great pleasure that is blameless. That is sensuality, basically. That's exactly how sensuality is. That's why people turn to sensuality when they are, a bit down or something bothers them. Like, let me scratch my itch and experience pleasure and forget about things that bother me. And yes, exactly. That's why people meditate with their sensuality more often than not.
So you can't. You wouldn't be able to achieve jhana, or through, I guess, finding disagreeable feelings or unpleasant feelings, just trying to replace it, and like in that sense, like, oh, right now I'm experiencing some sort of unpleasant mood or attitude. So let me, as I say, like thinking and pondering upon a certain, as I say, metta or karuna.
Yeah, you want to see why you're doing that.
See why you're trying
because,
to chase out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm thinking and pondering upon metta and karuna because I want to get rid of this discomfort. And that's why you won't be getting rid of the discomfort correctly. You're trying to replace it. You're trying to do the practice, but still doing the practice is secondary to you first wanting to be free from pain. But the practice is basically not giving in on account of how you feel, not giving in to the actions of it. So that's what I mean, like practice becomes your action of dealing with pain. And because of that, you won't be uprooting that pain.
So when pain arises, to just let it persist, and
Well, let it persist. Obviously, the thoughts will have to be there of some kind. So even if it's the thoughts that are hoping that the pain will disappear, as long as you don't lose perspective on those thoughts, you won't be giving into that hope. You will be practicing indifference regardless. So hoping that the pain disappear will be seen as part of the pain, not part of what you want and what you feel entitled to.
So directing, I mean, the entirety, your mind is just directed only on feeling and like, I guess, being attentive to that feeling arising, not trying to direct it elsewhere or trying to direct it.
No, again, see, why? Why would that be a problem if you direct it elsewhere? Why is that a problem?
Because I can see sort of like, I mean, thoughts, I mean, as restlessness.
Why do you need to stay with the feeling? Why do you must not allow your thoughts to go elsewhere?
Because then I'll become distracted by my thoughts, and then I'll start thinking either something pointed towards sensuality, distracting myself through my thoughts with sensuality of what I could be getting, and forgetting that I'm even feeling anything.
So, and then why would you not want to be distracted from sensuality?
Distracted by sensuality.
Yeah. So yeah, why would you want to avoid that?
Because that would be me trying to find I mean, that would be my normal tendency of finding an escape, right?
Sure, but I'm not asking why would you that's the reason why you would go to sensuality, to find escape. So why are you not wanting to go to sensuality? Because you don't want to find escape?
Because I want to develop knowledge and understanding in regard to, I guess, Dhamma, and become free from that.
From what?
That the craving, that sort of tendency or impulse to move away from seeing.
And why would you want to be free from that?
Because it leads to thinking in regards to unwholesome thoughts and to pain. Basically, it leads to further pain down the line in a future. So
leads to further pain. Does that mean it's already painful?
I suppose it would be because it's like an agitated.
It is. So that's why. Because you want to not experience pain. So you would go to sensuality with previous habits because you don't want to experience pain. Now you're restraining sensuality for the same reason, because you don't want to experience pain. Either way, you're affected by the pain. So you want to recognize then that, and that's why sense restraint cannot automatically result in freedom from pain. But that's why sense restraint is a necessary basis for the result of being free from pain. But that result will never occur for as long as your mind just stays on the level of what you're doing. As in, I'm doing sensuality or I'm doing restraint of sensuality. So restraint from sensuality is necessary, but in itself, it's still the same action rooted in the same reason of trying to avoid pain. So that's why just restraint in itself, you need to maintain, but if there is no wisdom, sensuality is still kind of the value, so to speak. So now you're just saying no to it, which is a necessary step, but in itself cannot lead you to the result that you want. And the result that you want is when you start recognizing that through sense restraint being established beforehand, you start recognizing that, doesn't matter what you, even like this sense of duty, I must practice Dhamma for this, for the future prevention of pain, all of that is secondary to the fact that right now, right here, you have experience of discomfort against which you crave to not be. And that's the root of all of your pains, future pains, past pains. Not what actually happened to you. So, see, even like sensuality is not a direct cause of pain. That's why it's hard to uproot it, because you don't necessarily see the connection. But sensuality is direct cause of craving, proliferation of craving. And then once you start equating craving and suffering, then you realize, yes, sensuality is the cause of suffering. Right here, right now, not even in the future. As you said, you are already pressured and agitated by the pressure of that direction, and that's already unpleasant. Which means pain is already there. Why? Because craving is already there. So you don't want to prevent pain from coming your way, because you can't. But you can certainly prevent maintenance of craving for which you're responsible. And you're responsible by giving in to pain or giving in to pleasure. By taking things up, you maintain the craving of it. So that's why it's always important to keep the context as to why. Not, oh, because of this. Like, see, you were explaining, oh, because of future suffering, because of this, because of this. But if you keep pushing it, it's always going to come back to here and now, because it cannot be anywhere else. You can't experience suffering today on account of craving from yesterday. You can experience craving today on account of which you suffered today. And yes, that craving has been maintained yesterday and day before yesterday and day before yesterday. But your suffering is not ever because of previous cravings. It's only because of the present craving. That's why it's felt presently. Or you cannot experience, you cannot feel the feeling of any kind in the past. Yeah. And you cannot feel the feeling of any kind in the future. It can only be felt presently. It can be on account of future things, sure, but it's felt presently. It can be on account of past actions, past things that happened to you, but it's felt presently. So that's what I mean. You cannot prevent the feeling from occurring because it's not within your domain of control. You are subjected to it. And then in the same sense, you don't need to, I must stay mindful of this, in a sense of I must be just looking at this feeling, because whether you look at it or not, it's felt there. So really you need to learn how to feel it without needing to stare at it all the time.
There's this forgetfulness that occurs during, like, you know, I mean, being aware of it, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is my mood, this is my attitude currently. But then if anxiety or restlessness occurs, then the thoughts just like start.
Yeah, and that's not the problem. That's part of the anxiety. It's you losing the sight of the whole picture on account of what's happening. That's how you lose your recollectedness, not because of what type of thoughts are there. So if you have thoughts of restlessness and anxiety, you include it within the situation, part of the situation.
Yeah. It's, I guess, extremely, I mean, in that sense, just, it's like a tide, like just a flood, just like sort of sweeps me up. And then it's like, I don't even remember I'm in my kuti anymore.
Right.
I don't even remember I'm here in Sri Lanka. I'm just wherever I am there.
See, even that is not necessarily a problem. You don't need to constantly tell yourself that you're in the kuti or you're in Sri Lanka. Your situation then is those thoughts. But you include that as secondary to the feeling. Not something, I must prevent this, I must remove this. No, it's just part of the experience that's currently enduring. And that's the whole point. Seeing that experience comes and goes on its own, and you are subjected to it, it's not other way around. Which means you can't choose what you're subjected to it.
Yeah.
Certainly not directly. You can choose to not be subjected to sensuality by leading the life of restraint, by avoiding the sensual environment and so on. But that's only like kind of circumstantial level of control, which is all you can do. That's why you have to develop these things beforehand, as the Buddha would say. But yes, so that's why, like inside the Satipatthana, so he knows the mind affected with lust as mind affected with lust. Mind affected with restlessness as mind affected with restlessness. As in, it's not you must deal with this, you must prevent it, you must tackle it. No, it's the mind affected by this thinking like this. Don't lose perspective on it. That's the extent of your responsibility. Not like this must stop occurring.
Yeah.
That is you overshooting the mark, which is why you remain affected by it.
So during these moments of restlessness and constant thinking, when I sort of just
don't try to get rid of it, and don't give in to it. So how you do that? You do that by when you want to get rid of it, you don't. Or when you want to give in it, you don't. I don't want to tell you, oh, do this or do that, because then that will become like your output for trying to get rid of it. So if I say, well, perhaps you could see what is your body doing while you're restless, you might see that accurately first, but then looking at what my body is doing while I'm restless will be what you do in order to get rid of the restlessness. And you don't want that. But yes, in a way, include it in your situation. Like, your body still needs to be there. Even if you're completely overwhelmed by the thoughts in your mind, it's still on account of the body present, enduring in a seated position. It's just it's the pressure of the tendency of wanting to get rid of the pain. That's always the problem. That's always why you would lose perspective. So you need to start training in regard to that. Not giving into the pressure to get rid of the pain. Which means you need to learn how to endure it on that right level. And sometimes you lose the sight, sometimes you won't. If the precepts are established beforehand, you won't act out of it in an extremely unwholesome manner. Then everything else can be contained, and then you can start seeing through that eventually.
Is I suppose like recollecting, like after these states, like have like sometimes they'll lose momentum on their own.
Well,
and I won't.
Yeah, you need to recollect that you mustn't try to get rid of it. You like that's basically the root of your recollection, because that's the root of your motivation. Now, what exactly you recollect through the recollection of I mustn't get rid of this, that's secondary. That's why you can have any reference point. Doesn't need to be a specific one. But if I tell you, recollect the body, you will be unaware that the motivation behind you recollecting your body is trying to get rid of the pain, which is the same motivation as why you would give to sensuality in the past, which is the motivation that perpetuates the craving in regard to how you feel. And that's why it's not freeing you. That's why psychology and psychotherapy is impotent when it comes to actually uprooting the problem. You can only manage it. So you want to recognize that now this is unpleasant means I want to get rid of it. Recognize that context, cultivate that context, and that's how you stop trying to get rid of it. When you stop trying to get rid of it, you stop craving against it. Absence of craving means absence of suffering. That's when you get to understand that anxiety was not unpleasant.
Yeah.
Things were not unpleasant. It was your own craving in regard to the things that was unpleasant.
For, I guess, most of my life, I mean, since I've read the suttas and since I began monastic life and living at a monastery, I took it on myself to read a sutta, the removal of distracting thoughts, and I had always sort of followed that as a method. Like, if this thought is going to lead down, into the unwholesome, then it's better to, they had the 4 different methods, the steps, either just recognize it for what it is, and then it will go on its own, or substitute it,
try the opposite,
crush it, mind and mind, try to stop it. And I guess I still have that same sort of tendency of being like, okay, so this, is bad, and I must, substitute.
I must get rid of it.
With,
No, but see, even that sutta, substituting the thoughts, means first understanding what they are. And that's the problem when people read that sutta, or generally when Buddha says, he doesn't tolerate thoughts of ill will or thoughts of sensuality, means I must get rid. No. You tolerating it or not is on you. Arising of the thing is not on you. Yet, when you read not tolerate, you think I must get rid of its presence. There's a simile I was given before, like somebody comes at your doorstep. You let them in or you don't. That's on you. If you close the door, they can stand as long as they want out there. That's not a problem. That's what we say. He doesn't welcome the thoughts of sensuality. He doesn't delight in it. He doesn't entertain it. And that's how you get rid of it. The person will leave your doorstep when he realizes he's not coming in. Either way, he will not be allowed in. He gives up. And that's same the Mara. He still assails and attacks, but like the enlightened mind, he realizes, I'm wasting my time here. And then the Mara leaves. Then you stop having even those assailing thoughts. But not understanding that, like to what extent is your responsibility, that's how you think, I must go out and chase it. Either way you get involved, either way that person sees that it has effect on you. Whether you let them in or shout them, you acknowledge them. And that's the point. That's all they want. Mara wants acknowledgement, recognition.
So, recollecting the context.
Recollecting being aware of the content in order to recollect the context. Not trying to get rid of the content is the context you want to cultivate.
Knowing the content and recollecting the context. So
Yeah, knowing in terms of just seeing what's there, not in terms of analyzing or figuring it out. That's irrelevant.
Instead of just pushing it away so it's not even in my view.
Exactly, not trying to deny the content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And that my own, that seeing of the content, recollecting of the context, that increases my understanding, and so.
Well, it increases familiarity now with that relationship, and then everything else that you know from suttas you can begin seeing it against that new familiarity. See, I used to read this, he doesn't tolerate the sensual thought. Yes, that can mean I go and try and get rid of it, but it can also mean I don't tolerate it for whatever it has arisen. I don't entertain it. I don't say, yes, come please. No. So I'm not welcoming it, I'm not entertaining it, I'm not delighted on account of it. So then you realize the things you thought you understood can be understood in even in a different manner, in a greater manner, so to speak, in a more accurate manner. Because now you're developing the new context you're becoming familiar with. Content and context of the content. Content is what you can attend to directly. Context is the peripheral of it.
That's whatever's like, sort of like the feeling being imposed on me.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever experience.
Oh, there's this. Okay, the context of this is I don't want it. I want to get rid of it. I want to act out of it. I want it to disappear. That's the context of your action. But then you realize that context is contradictory because I even didn't have say in this arising, yet here I am hoping I can remove it. And that's why you suffer. You don't suffer because of the arising of the thing. You suffer because you're craving towards it.
Thinking my previous learning and understanding is, there's like gross levels of suffering that one does away with. One doesn't participate in the worldly life because they see,
that is true on that kind of circumstantial level.
But then there's the more subtle kinds of.
Yeah, like you don't become a sotapanna by gradually removing your putujana suffering. You become a sotapanna, like what the suttas say, by uprooting the thorn of suffering. And then as a result of that, all of your other suffering will fade. Because you remove the root, the source of it. And that's the important thing to understand. Because otherwise you'll think that all these little circumstantial practices you do are somehow magically contributing to this suffering diminishing. It's the other way around. First you need to understand what suffering is, and by doing so you fully uproot the core of it, then all the other residues will fade away. But not like through fading away of the residues I will deplete the core. Nope. That's why, again, the Four Noble Truths is what makes a sotapanna. There is suffering, as in suffering is there. I understand it. I understand what it is. I understand what causes it. What is the reason for suffering. So which means until the sotapanna, you don't even know what suffering is. And that's exactly the case. Putujana thinks suffering is in the eyes, in the sights, in the sounds, smell, taste, touches, and so on. Suffering is in what such and such said to you. Suffering is in not getting this. Then you secondarily remove your desires, so you don't want things in the future, so you don't get disappointed, so you don't suffer. That is, as I said, circumstantially correct. And yeah, it's still better than being heedless completely, but you're not uprooting the suffering. Suffering was never in getting what you want or not getting what you want. Suffering was always rooted in presence of craving in regard to the presence of feeling. And that's what you need to understand. If you understand that, all the other suffering will be depleted. Sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but it will have to be depleted.
Understanding craving in regards to feeling.
Yeah. So first you need to recognize what feeling is. then stop trying to get rid of it. Stop trying to go towards it. Stop trying to go away from it. Stop trying to ignore it. By practicing that, you're practicing attitudes that are not compatible with craving.
Yeah.
And that's how craving diminishes.
I think about like eating a meal. Sometimes, I mean, we get varying kinds of food. Sometimes some food is better than depending on what day it is, the quality, or the sugar content, or along those lines. So, understanding as I'm eating the content of the food. This is sweet. This is tasty. This is gonna give me give me more pleasant feelings of eating or something along those lines. But understand that context, not rejecting the food.
No, you can't. Exactly. And same, you can try and avoid the taste, and always eat what you don't want to eat, thinking that's how somehow you will avoid the craving, but you won't. You're already acting out of that craving. You just recognize that you cannot remain indifferent towards taste, so you're trying to hide it. Now you need to develop a greater context than the context of taste. You need to develop a greater reason for eating than the reason of taste. And then just keep mind on that level. Doesn't matter how much you enjoy it or not, the food. So what is the greater context? Well, as the Buddha said, you reflect, you ponder, you keep in your mind, even when you don't eat, the reason why you would eat. Is just to stay healthy, to have enough strength to endure elements, and so you can practice the Dhamma. And you eat only to the point of diminishing the hunger, not overeating. So keep that context while you're eating. Enjoyment or non-enjoyment becomes secondary. So it's the most agreeable food you can have. But you are only keeping your mind on, am I still full or am I not full? You feel full? Fine. Stop eating. Doesn't matter what else is left to be eaten. You don't feel full? Stop worrying about how tasty the food is. Because that's not the reason you're eating. Once you start worrying about it, am I start doubting it, you lost the context of the right reasons for eating. The hindrance of doubt, hindrance of worry, hindered you, obstructed you, and now you've... So see, by worrying about the taste, you give power to the taste. By trying to get rid of the taste, you give power to the taste. By indulging the taste carelessly, you give power to the taste. By not worrying about any of those movements, but maintaining the context of mindfulness, the reason for eating is removing hunger. The moment hunger is gone, you stop eating. That's it. You remain true to the right principle. Your mindfulness remains undiminished. Even if it doesn't feel right. That doesn't matter how you feel.
It's not supposed to mean, it's supposed to feel right.
It's not always going to feel pleasantly, because when the hindrance is present, it's going to torment you. But that's the point. You're not acting anymore from how you feel. You're acting from the right context.
So even as that hindrance is enduring,
exactly,
persisting in the experience.
And that's the point. Hindrances don't disappear. Even in jhana. You disappear from the domain of hindrances. But they remain living where they were. Because all hindrances are bodily. They're bound with the body. That's why they've felt there's all this discomfort and everything else. Even doubt and restlessness. Your mind is bound with the body in the same sense. So you don't overcome hindrances by preventing them from arising. You overcome hindrances by being imperturbable regardless of their arising or not. That's how you are not hindered by them.
And that imperturbableness comes from...
Not acting out of feeling.
And always understanding the context.
Not like always, I must always understand it. Simply not losing it.
Yeah, not losing it.
Like understanding of the context doesn't require attentive maintenance. Just requires clarity of understanding. That's it. So it becomes effortless.
That reminds me, like in a sutta where someone asked the Buddha, like an arahant, like how does he know? I mean, is he always thinking about his knowledge? He's like only when he reviews his knowledge, he's
or
like,
something prompts it.
He's not obsessing and like constantly.
Yeah. And that's also how arahant still has preferences. I prefer to eat this over this. This is more agreeable. This is less agreeable. None of that is rooted in desire and craving anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But if you refuse to ever look beyond the preferences, beyond the pleasure that you get through eating, you refuse to look at any different context.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people refuse to look that way because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid that if I look away from I must avoid pleasurable tastes, then I will automatically go back to pleasurable tastes. But that's not the case. You go back to pleasurable tastes when you choose to go back to pleasurable tastes. But you remain bound with the dependence on pleasurable tastes for as long as you're trying to deny the pleasurability of the taste. So they think that through denying, they can replace the dependence on pleasurable tastes. And because of that, they don't. So only through discerning the greater context, regardless of pleasurable or displeasurable taste, you get to surmount the dependence on the taste.
So understand like the gratification of the taste, the danger.
Yeah, that's like, those are not four different things you would understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one thing that gets fully understood in all these facets.
In the context of
Yeah.
suffering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, in the suttas, sometimes the Buddha breaks up in like Maha Dukkha Kanda, knowing the gratification, danger, and then he knows the escape.
Yeah, whenever he uses that kind of formula to describe, means full understanding, like full, complete clarity in regard to that context.
But no need or method to recollect the danger.
Well, you won't be. See, you will need to recollect the danger because you haven't fully understood it,
Yeah.
which means you haven't fully understood the danger. So yeah, you should be trying to understand the danger, of course, but don't think that that's what the Buddha means by this formula. He fully understands it. So you need to fully understand your dependence on it, your freedom from it. When you're fully free, means you're fully understood the danger, the escape, the gratification, and so on.